Coming up, Noah Clowney is shut down for the year. What do we make of the first 2 seasons of the young potential core member for the Brooklyn Nets going forward? We dive in. Coming up next.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, my friends, it is the Locked On Nets podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. He's Doug Norrie. I'm Adam Marbeck. We thank you, as always, for making us your first listen of the day. We are hungry on all those great platforms, and let you know, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. And Doug, another night off for the Brooklyn Nets. They'll get back on the court on Thursday. But as we get the news that Noah Clowney, the ankle, it's going to shut him down for the remainder of this season. And it's been a pretty big swing, I would say, with how we felt about him in the small sample at the end of his rookie season to now fast forward a year later, probably a lot murkier than we thought we would be exiting year number 2.
Yeah, it's for sure been like a weird season for him. And I would say 100% not what we expected going in. I think we had really pretty high hopes for what was going to happen here based on, not exactly the whole rookie season, but definitely what was happening sort of the end of the rookie season, which was he's playing a lot of minutes and he's just dialing up block shots all over the place. And it's like the 3-pointers falling to 36%. And like, it's looking very much like, oh, the Nets really have something here. And I don't think I'm ready to walk that statement back necessarily. But as we've said many times on the show this year, this season was so different than like every possible way than what we saw last year that I think it is a little hard to make a determination around what it is. Now, he's so young that I'm not worried about it even in the slightest. I don't think, but it is only because
slightly worried, most likely.
No, it's only because this, like, the style and the stats are such head scratchers. Like he just played a totally different way. And that's the only thing where I'm like, and I think the way he played is fine in the grand scheme of things, because if it all comes together, then it's like pretty kind of maybe the full package. But it really was like from a statistical and eye test standpoint, just 2 different players. Like he was one guy in 2023-24. And then this year he was just a totally different player. And so it's almost like if he can combine these, find the middle somewhere, it's going to be awesome. But he just was two totally different guys over his first 2 seasons.
No, 100%. And we talked about it on a high level, the 3-point shooting, obviously, in the volume, right? Because he goes from his rookie season. And by the way, we also know too, he started in the G League last year. We had talked about it all throughout the season. When's the right time? I had advocated for him to be up a little bit sooner. Ends up playing 23 games, starting 4, right? And he knocks down 36% from the field on 33 attempts over those 24 games. So he ends up averaging, he's only averaging 3 shots from beyond the arc. Fast forward to this year, it's 9 shots from beyond the arc per game, right? The majority of his diet from the field is from deep. Only basically 4 shots per game from anywhere other than 3-point territory. A year ago, it was close to 6. And a lot of that stuff was around the basket. A lot of it's getting out in transition. There's things that I think we would talk about with him on a functional level. One, Jordi Fernandez coming in, understanding where the NBA is going and wanting to develop, different areas of his game. And then the fluidity of the season too, right? Like you start with Dennis Schroeder, then he ends up getting traded. You do get D'Lo back. There's a lot of fluctuation in the rotation and the roster that we said time and again. It's hard for young players to develop consistently when there's a lot of moving parts and when, frankly, the team is bad. So the fact that his game has been so different isn't concerning, as you say. It's just, I think, leaving it still in a little bit of ambiguity around what will he ultimately become. Plays in 46 games this year, starts 20. As I say, high volume and 3-point attempts, and that's fine. But where does it go from here? And now we'll talk about 69 games played over his first 2 seasons. Still just 20 years old, but it's going to be more open-ended, I guess. And we're going to have a big conversation about the offseason, coming back from the ankle, and then where he fits in depending on what they do in the draft, right? So he's just another puzzle piece. And it's a bummer in that regard. I know it's a little bit long-winded, but it's just a bummer that I think you and I both would have said at the end of the second year, we're going to be talking about, look what Noah Clowney is, as opposed to our conversation being, what do we think Noah Clowney is going to become, right? And that's unfortunate for him.
Again, 20 years old, so he's so young.
All the time.
one of the youngest players in the NBA. And so there's just a long timeline here. So I think from that standpoint, I don't think I'm not concerned. Really, I think he's going to be a very good player. I actually will stand on that. I would buy Noah Clowney stock for sure right now. He has a lot of the things you want to see in a player at this stage, and has things that you simply can't reproduce in other places, like wingspan, athleticism, right? Like things that you just can't coach into somebody. Like you either have that stuff or you don't. So he has those two things. And I think generally he has like pretty good instincts, with the understanding that like the speed of the NBA game is fast. And for a 20-year-old, it's super fast. So I think all those things are fine. I think, what we talked about a bunch this year, and it's worth just sort of reiterating here, is just how different things became this year, right? So last year, just on a quick look, he took about a 1.4 3-pointers per game in 16 minutes last year. It was almost up to 5.7 in 22.7 minutes this year. So, I mean, really spiked the 3-pointers. Like, was just basically.
Sorry, and I was quoting like a per 36-minute stat before, so I'm glad you reiterated where his
it's fine. Right. Yeah. But he triples triples or quadruples the per minute 3-point attempts, right? Which become almost all of his shot diet. So even if you just start there, I'll get to the other stuff in a second, like the rebounding and the block shots and stuff. But even if you just start the 3-point shooting, he played a lot of stretch 4. They really didn't start him at the 5 at all. Like the times he started, he would play at the 4. They kind of, they played Darren Sharp a lot when he was playing. They would play Nick Claxton. And so they kind of weren't profiling him as a 5. And it was kind of just, you're going to be a 3 and D guy. And just to read these names real quick, and if you've heard say this in the podcast before, like we just have quoted these stats, but it's just worth going back to again. If you look at the percentage of his shots, of his 3-pointers compared to just his overall shot diet, he is a shooting guard, right? Yeah. Like the guys in front, the guys in and around him in this range are Derek White, Malik Beasley, Buddy Hield, Lou Dort, like a little above him, Derek White, D-Rob, Grayson Allen, Dante DiVincenzo. It's all 2 guards. Like those are the other players in the NBA. Dorian Finney-Smith in there actually. But those are the guys in the NBA that are taking.
Interesting when you think about where he was and Noah Clowney and the role.
They're not totally dissimilar. Like they're not crazy dissimilar players. With DFS is bigger, but like overall, like he's just taking 3-pointers. And if you look at those guys that he's shooting with, like that's it. So I think there was like an organizational edict to like have him do that to some degree, like where they played him. They want to get the 3-point shooting. A guy like this with this size, if you can make threes in the NBA, you're good. Like if you're this big and this athletic and you can make threes in the NBA, you will play for a long time. And that I think is his trajectory. And what we saw this year from him was like he had a very quick trigger on the threes. Like there was no hesitation. If you watch them all year, the shot charts won't show this to you, but there was rise and fire on when he got the ball a lot. And I think that is a great sign. So I'm not surprised the efficiency drops a little bit from 36 to 33 on the increased attempts. I think like from that one standpoint, if I'm just looking at that stuff, I think it's very encouraging, even with the understanding that the efficiency dipped pretty dramatically on just the field goals and the 3-point shooting. But the field goal attempt efficiency drops because he just only took threes. Right.
It's impacted by the volume of 3 points that he's taking. It doesn't
exactly
out, right. Yeah,
exactly. So it's like you can almost explain that one away a little bit. Now, if he did only this next year, I think it's a different story. But like when you think about just that part of his game, I mean, are you encouraged by it or discouraged by it? Because I think it's like a pretty dramatic. It's just such a dramatic shift.
No, you have to be. Coming up here in a second, we'll explain why this is a positive thing for his development overall and why you should look at some of the per 36-minute stats and think about how he can fit into an evolving Brooklyn Nets rotation. Overall, Noah Clowney is going in the right direction. Biggest disappointment this year was not getting to see more of it. We'll continue the conversation coming up here in just one moment.
All right, before we get to that, I'll tell you about our friends over at FanDuel. NCAA tournament's here. FanDuel is giving you a chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers are going to get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. There's 200 extra bucks. You're going to use it on everything from buzzer beaters, Cinderella stories. It's cutting out the nets. It's all there for you over on FanDuel. Look, it's tournament time. The games are happening. They're coming up here over the weekend. Final four getting started. That's what you want to hear. You're going to visit FanDuel.com. You're going to get it in the college hoops action. You can grab that $200 in bonus bets. If your first $5 bet wins, go over to our friends at FanDuel.com.
All right, as we continue today's Locked On Nets episode, talking about Noah Clowney, the end of his season, dealing with the ankle injury, so shut down for, I mean, listen, we get down the final handful of games. It's not like season over is really as big as it feels when it happens during different points of the year. But how do we feel about him going forward? So you mentioned there, the sheer volume, and you're right, the 33, 34%, okay. It also is an evolution of his game. So I think with time comes more consistency. And with the evolution, we talk about this with every player. We talk about this with Cam Thomas. What's his role when you don't have any talent around him? Then sometimes you get these glimpses and you think, yeah, if the team gets better, then he gets better. Will Noah Clowney on a per 36-minute basis take 9 3-point attempts per game next season? Probably not, because guess what? You mentioned those stats before. If you go and look at it, he'd be a top 10 guy. Right now, Donovan Mitchell takes 9 3-point attempts per game, right? The best in the league is Steph Curry, taking over 11. Anthony Edwards taking 10, right? 10 from Jason Tatum. So the big volume shooters come in a lot of different forms in that regard. I think it'll balance itself out. And then there's other advanced stats that bode well for him as well. Going from his rookie season to his second year, he also improved to the free throw line. Again, per 36, he's only going to get to the line 3 times a game, but he's knocking it down to 84%. So you're also seeing nice needle moves in other key areas. Do you think there's probably other, I know there's other stats we want to get to, but I'm of the mind that the rebounding and the field goal balance in terms of shot selection, you'll just naturally see that balance itself out next year. Whereas you mentioned organizationally, it was just, let's develop this part of his game. That's what the goal is this year. And I think if we saw more from him in terms of games and minutes, we might feel differently about the total body of work this year. Injuries did impact him over the course of the season.
Yeah. Okay. So a couple things there. So agreed on the 3-pointers and agreed on the nice development of the free throw shooting improves slightly, right? Those are usually good signs that track, a 7-footer or a 6, close to 7-footer who can knock down 84% of his 80 to 84% of his free throws is you have the chance to be really good then, because if you ever start going near if you ever get near the basket and if you can get near the basket and make your free throws, like that is a total cheat code, right? Like guys like him, he's not ever going to be Embiid, but one of the reasons Embiid, among the many reasons he was so great, Jokic too, is that like they're big, they're near the basket, and then they get fouled, and then they make their free throws, right? Like the things that hold some of these other guys back, these other bigs, is that they just simply can't make the free ones, and you get fouled the most when you're near the basket. So like if you're going to be an 80% free throw shooter as like 6'9" guy, that's great. Now you have to be near the basket to get fouled, and he's not doing that right now. So I think overall the shooting is going to be good. I think he's going to be a really good shooter. And I think if you look at his shot chart too, which we're not going to have up here, but the shot chart isn't just like corner 3 stuff too. I mean, he took a lot of dead on threes. Like he took them from everywhere this year. And I think that's a good sign too. That just, it's not just, it wasn't stand in the corner stuff. It was pretty equal like dispersion around a few more in the corner. That's to be expected, but I don't know, pretty heavy diet, like around above the break and stuff too. So I think overall that's pretty good. I do think the rebounding thing is weird and is not explained 100% by like the change in shooting. I think they are different things, right? Because it's just a totally different end of the court. And so I don't know. What do you make of the rebounding? Because it was not gone, but it definitely didn't increase anywhere close to like the per minute stuff.
Yeah.
Is there a chance he's just like not a great rebounder? I mean,
no, well,
it's like 3.9 rebounds per 23 minutes is like not many rebounds for a guy his size. Do you think it's just like not in his game? I don't know. What do you think about the rebounding?
Yeah, well, I mean, so you go back and you look, right? So my case for why I'm not concerned about the rebounding, he goes from 2.5 defensive rebounds per game, averaging 16 minutes, almost 23 minutes this year, and only 3 defensive rebounds. But the bigger one would be go and look at the advanced stats, where when you look at offensive rebound percentage, he went from 7.5% to 4.5% year over year. His defensive rebounding was 16.7, 15.8. So not that big of a drop off on the defensive end. Offensively, less rebounding. Why? Because he's taking all the threes, right? Like he's nowhere near the basket to get those. So there's probably a difference. The balance of what his defensive game looked like this year relative to last year was noticeable. Rim protection, right? The blocks last season were what popped off the page, the athleticism and protecting the rim. So I wonder if there's a adjustment around your offensive game and how that connects to what you do defensively. In theory, because he's taking more perimeter shots, he should be in the best possible position to be in a good anchor defensive role. However, a year ago, he played a little bit more. He played some 5 mixed in the bag there down the end of the season. This year, as you said, pair with Nick Claxton, pair with Day'Ron Sharpe. If you're going to push him more into the 4 role, then where he lives defensively is different. He's out on the perimeter. He's athletic enough to switch on those assignments. So I think the role is going to adjust that. Whether or not the Nets view him as not an elite rebounder, right? Not in the Day'Ron Sharpe mold. That could be. And I think that probably is the chicken or the egg here of, are the Nets developing this part of his game because they want him to be a well-rounded weapon? Or did they choose to go this way? Did Jordi Fernandez come in and say, this is what he's going to be, because I don't think he can be an elite defensive rebounder for us. I don't think he's going to clean glass on both ends. So we might as well lean into what we believe he's going to be best suited to develop as. And guess what? By modern NBA standards, this is the better path to go of the two, because Day'Ron Sharpe's a monster on the boards and he can't sniff the court because that's basically the only thing that he can do.
Yeah, and when you're playing switch defense and stuff like that, and you're not going to be playing the pure center role, and you're not going to be in drop, like those rebounding opportunities, if you're not going to play center, like it's not going to just come. They're not, those rebounding opportunities just aren't going to be there. If you look at, along the same lines of like the per minute rebounding, some of it can be explained away a little bit by system. I think some can be just like some guys just have the nose for it and some don't, right? Like I think we've seen plenty of situations like that. It's a little weirder with rebounding because the rebound, again, is like a lot of it's system and a lot of it's just like player makeup. But the guys around them on a per minute rebounding, none of them are 5s for sure. Like that's not a shocker because he's not rebounding. But it's like, and some of them are like, Kelly Oubre's and the Aaron Gordons of the world. But like, if you look at Aaron Gordon, it's like, okay, well, he played with like a true center the whole time and that wasn't his job, right? Yeah. Like he's just not supposed to be rebounding. So I'm trying to like pull out like the other like guys that are at the 4, let's say, that are like Jalen Williams from OKC is in this range of like per minute, like low. He's actually lower than Clowney. And it's like, okay, well, if you play with Chet Holmgren and you play with Isaiah Hartenstein and like, you're going to play the 4, but like, I guess the 3 sometimes, you're just not required to get a lot of rebounds, even though you kind of are a 3-4 for the team, right? Yep. A lot of other guys in this range are guards. I will say that. So it makes sense that you're just not seeing, like these big rebounding numbers for him. Like most guys are of like 2 guard, man, most of them are like in the 3 range. It's like Jaden McDaniels, Jonathan Kuminga, Zaire Williams is in here, right? Tobias Harris. Like that's the group that's in his per rebounding, which is like not bad when you read these names. I think it's just like wasn't the expectation. Yeah. Like the expectation was that like this was just going to be different. Maybe it's just going to be among this group of guys that I just read. That's like not a bad list. And I'm not comparing that list to like his skill level necessarily. It's more like, okay, you don't have to be 6'9" and rebound like a maniac to be good. Because I'm going to read players here that do plenty of other things on the court really well and just aren't required to be on the glass the whole time, if that makes sense. Right. So it's like, it's not like you just have to be a 10 rebound a game guy because your system and just like some of the other things around you just aren't dictating that.
Yeah. I mean, and real quick, so before you go to those other names, I was thinking about too, like, so you look at last season. Now, again, he played obviously less. So a year ago, he ends up giving you, what does it end up being? He plays 370 minutes. He plays over 1,000 this year, right? So the sample sizes are going to be a lot bigger. But a year ago, he shared the court with Nick Claxton for 400. Oh, sorry, this season, 480 minutes with Nick Claxton on the floor and Day'Ron Sharpe off. He shared it with just Day'Ron Sharpe, 239 minutes. So you got a bigger sample size around it, as opposed to a year prior when with Nicholas Claxton, 92 minutes, and with Day'Ron Sharpe, 63. From a percentage standpoint, that those aren't like 1-to-1, right? So there's a shift here around when they want to get these guys, these players on the court together and how they want to see how they function. So from a role standpoint, and 2 things. From a role standpoint, when you're on the court with Day'Ron Sharpe, you're going to be worried less about getting defensive rebounds. Like, let him do the thing that he's incredible at. And then the other part of it is, you might be right about the mentality piece. This isn't a knock on Noah Clowney. But like Day'Ron Sharpe has a cellular level desire to rebound the basketball, right? Nicholas Claxton on a cellular level wants to get recovered from behind blocks on guys, right? Like there's just like something that's ingrained in them to do that. I don't know if that's Noah Clowney. Noah Clowney might just be this naturally athletic player who can do a lot of things well, and finding his lane at still just 20 years old is going to be a part of that process. Doug's going to tell us coming up here in just 1 minute. These other players around the league that do a lot of things really well that don't involve necessarily rebounding, and whether or not we like that path for Noah Clowney as he develops. We'll do that here in just one moment. All right, my friends. Another dramatic pause. I'm thinking about making it part of the show. As we tie a pretty little bow on today's Locked On Nets episode, peek behind the curtain. I had an error in yesterday's episode when it came to where we wanted our ad reads to go. We have a whole list. We're on a network. We've been doing it for years. I said to Doug, don't worry. I'm on track today. And yeah, I kind of waited for Doug to do an ad read coming out of the second break there, but he gave me that nice blank stare with that grin on his face. It let me know. Let's go ahead and move this thing along. Who are the other players that share kind of similar skill sets that can be valuable around the league?
Well, I think I mean, to some degree gave him like, I threw Aaron Gordon in there. I threw Jalen Williams from OKC in there. I'm looking at like from a rebounding standpoint, but if you're trying to think about guys who like systematically don't necessarily need to play near the rim to be effective, but can kind of make life difficult for you. Because if you look at Noah Clowney and think to yourself, okay, well, he's going to be a sort of like a defensive anchor-ish kind of guy, or just like super versatile. Let's not call him an anchor. Let's call him like defensive, like very defensively versatile guy.
Yeah.
Right. And that can shoot threes and, can probably play the 5 in a pinch and make things really difficult for you, for another team with the right skill set, but also make it really difficult if you have like a defensive anchored 5 in place, and he can play the 4 and just like really range the perimeter. I mean, it's not it's not 100% comparison, but like, is there like a Jaren Jackson Jr. in him? Because like, he's the kind of guy that lives like sort of in that range, right? It's like similar size ish, right? Triple A is bigger, right? He's just like sort of like has a 4 body, but he's also 5-6 years older. So I don't know. It's like, is that like the top end version of him? It's like, yeah, it's not gonna be near the rim. He's not gonna get to this level probably defensively, but I don't know. It's like the worst comparison in the world, right? He's like Jaren Jackson Jr. is not putting the ball on the deck. Like, he's got a versatile game. It's really come along a lot in recent years to be like super versatile. I don't know. Like, I think like things like that are interesting to think about 5 years out from now. Not now. Not right now, but like has some of the other prerequisites you need in place to get there. Athleticism, height, big wingspan, can shoot the 3. Again, it's like someone's going to be like, oh, he's never going to be like that. I mean, probably not, right? Like, this guy's perennial defensive player of the year candidate. So I don't think he's like necessarily there, but I do think it's worth like, sometimes it's like easy. I'm definitely guilty of this. It's like, what could go wrong? It's like, okay, well, what could go right? Okay, great.
What's the just works out scenario here?
Okay, like, yeah, I could do all the things that can go wrong. Let's do a few that could go right. Yeah. What could go right here is he maintains the same level of sort of just like size that he has. The 3-point shooting comes around to be like 36-37%. The rebounding never has to totally come around because you're just like not playing a system like that. You bring back some of the defensive versatility because, again, we talked about this a couple podcasts ago. It's like, hey, defense takes a while to be really good. It just does. Like, you just don't come into the league. Very few guys come into the league and are just awesome at really nobody does. Like,
and the sexiness of a year ago when he was going athletically and running down blocks and he had the multi-block game, it's exciting. But fundamentally, it's not like you were like, oh my God, this guy. We said this a lot of times with the Brooklyn Nets with past years under different coaches, where it was like, oh, high effort, high energy, great. Also, that's a fine line between total chaos and functioning properly within your role, right? So it does take time to develop. And I think Jordi Fernandez, talk about head coaches, like Jordi Fernandez is a guy that's good. He said this. We've heard this, especially we talk about Cam Thomas all the time, right? Like, you got to do what we need you to do. And it's okay if you're making mistakes, but like, we have what we want you to accomplish to be a contributor consistently on both ends. I'm sure Noah Clowney has gotten a laundry list of things that he needs to work on and dedicate time to become a player that Jordi Fernandez believes in and trusts consistently.
Yeah, and look, maybe he's just never going to be like Jaren Jackson Jr. is got a considerably like more diverse offensive game. So and like even came into the league kind of like able to take a bunch more shots than he's been able to. So maybe it's like not a perfect comparison, but I don't think it's like so far off on a world where you could see a trajectory where he gets to be a lot more confident and just gets to be better in like that same kind of ilk, a light version of that. I don't know. That doesn't feel crazy to me.
I've got some interesting stats here to touch back onto his 3-point shooting. But before I do that, I want to be proven right. And that's really important to me at any point in my life. And that's why I'm going to tell you about 5-hour energy. Because guys, daylight savings came by here recently, and maybe you're still bogged down from it. That's where 5-hour energy has your back. The extra sunshine means more time for fun, but sometimes you need a little boost to power through. Whether you're staying up late watching that NCAA tournament that's going to be tying a bow on, squeezing in a round of golf after work, or just trying to keep up with your busy day, 5-hour energy gives you quick, refreshing pick-me-up whenever you need it. Head over to 5hourenergy.com and you'll find 15 flavors to choose from, including watermelon, blue raspberry, and peach mango. You can even build your own 12-pack or 24-pack delivered right to your door. Need one now? Go to 5-Hour Energy Shot at your local grocery store, convenience store. They're everywhere. Stock up today and stay energized. Wow, I'm a hero. Now, the other thing that I want to mention here, because Doug said this accurately about the balance from year over year. So if you think about Noah Clowney and his 3-point shooting, and I agree, like, listen, let's just be, by the way, there's no reason not to be positive. It's a small sample size these couple of seasons. It's a big shift in terms of role year over year. And as we've always said, let's see the rookies come in. Let's get them in that group. Guess what? They're going to have rookie draft class, and Noah Clowney is going to be within probably 12 to 16 months of the age range of guys that are coming in this draft for the Brooklyn Nets. But Noah Clowney's shot chart, small sample size a year ago. 3-point shooting, I'm just going to give you the percentages of what he knocked down. 38 from the right corner, 63 from the left. Now, that was only 5 out of 8. He knocked down 100% of his left wing looks, and that was going to be 1 for 1. Above the break, he was 1 out of 10. That's it. I'm not going to worry too much more about it. Let's fast forward to this season. Doug mentioned about the balance. So he knocked down above the break. He took 100 3-point attempts from above the break, knocking down 32. So 32% from there. In the corner, 13 of 40. In the right corner, 18 of 47, 33 and 38%. And then from each of the wings, 33 and 32%, very even, 11 to 34 and 13 for 40. Above the break is where he spent most of his time when it comes to the perimeter looks, but almost all incredible balance around the entire arc. So that also speaks to a development of a facet of his game that is not just, hey, let's see what that looks like. It's dedication, because you want to be able to walk into next year and say, how do we feel about where your game is and what we can trust you to do? You can look at every single spot on the perimeter of the court and feel confident about it. And then, oh, by the way, the other big thing here is in and around the basket, equal to what he did above the break, 100 looks, 43% right around the basket on 100 attempts, 43 out of 100. So, like, there's areas finishing around the basket, getting a little more muscle on, being a little more aggressive when you get to the rim, that can change it too. And we talked about at the top, that can draw more fouls, get you to the free throw line where you can make other teams pay. So I think there's this kind of, pendulum swinging about building different areas. If that comes back up, finishing around the rim alone, guess what? Now, all of a sudden, this is a guy that's really well-rounded, has a lot of athleticism and versatility on the defensive end. And we're really excited about what year 3 looks like for him. And I expect that to be the case.
I think one thing we'll be like very certain of by the end of this, and I think I'm pretty certain of it now, but now it's just a matter of how high it goes, is like if you did this draft, if you did that 2023 draft again, like he would definitely have gone higher than 21, right? Yep. Like I think like that I can say that fairly now with room for growth, right? So like if you look at the draft now, he went 21 overall. Guys that you for sure take him over now, right now, Jalen Hood for Chavino, bang, Kobe Buffkin for sure, Jordan Hawkins probably, Jett Howard, I think for sure, almost. So like that's 4 guys minimum that he's already gone up and over. Jury's going to be out on some of these other guys like Jaime Jaquez. I mean, some of that's going to be an age thing. And some are like, pods he's probably not going to get over. And like there's going to be some other guys. But I think you minimum go take them 4 to 5 slots higher already, right? And I without much hope of some of these guys like eclipsing him, and there's really no one behind him except for like maybe Gigi Jackson that goes up and over him. So like I think overall Yeah, like just from a value standpoint, like if you did the redraft again, he would go higher. I think for sure.
Yeah.
And so I think like that's the right. If you want to think about trajectory, that's probably the right. That actually, I'm going to start using that as like the trajectory thing rather than the like linear path around like how much better you should be getting each year. It's like
wherever a player is in his career now, early on, would you have drafted him higher based on how you feel now, right?
Are you outpacing your peers? Like, are you outpacing your peers in a similar situation? I think it's like safe to say he's climbing the board compared to where the NBA thought he was at the time. And that's a good sign. And like, that's the right kind of growth. Because if you take a name around them and you're like, Jalen Hood-Schifino, you're like, no. Right? Like that's going the wrong direction.
Speaking of comparing him to his peers, and I hate to do this, but or if like you look in that same draft class, you go, who went at 22? Tariq Whitehead. Well, come on. I mean, he's outpacing him by a country mile. So you got to feel really good about the pick now in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I didn't want to. Yeah, it's like, he's way ahead. I got the guy that took a
gotta love. Nothing's better than the Brooklyn Nets bookending their own journey when it comes to.
And I think like that's like probably the more fair way to start evaluating some of this stuff is like, where did you land? Where are you landing now compared to sort of like where the market had you at the time? That's a fair market representation, pretty much of like where he was, and now he'd be higher, I think, if they did it again. And I think that overall is a good sign. Okay, we're going to get out of here. We'll be back again. No, that's not what I say here. Well, here's what I tell you to do. You go over to YouTube and you hit subscribe to Locked On Nets over on YouTube. Or
no, wait, let me finish.
You go to Spotify or iTunes. I don't even know if there are other places, but those two, hit like and subscribe, leave a review on both. Both 5 stars or bust. 5 stars or bust. One. Then you go get a friend's your loved one's account. You log into them on both. You like and subscribe, and you'll also leave 2 5-star reviews. That's not asking much. That's like 22 button clicks. That's not much.
It may seem like, based on the way Doug presented the information, that it seems like a lot. It's really not. It's super simple.
It's like 20 to 30 minutes of that. Like 20 to 30 minutes. You sit down. You get the devices out. 30, maybe it's 35 minutes because you don't know someone's password. Let's round up to 40. You take 45 minutes.
It's a quick hour and a half, and you're done. And then you're done. And by the way, super clear. You can listen to 3 Locked On Nets episodes while you're doing that. So it's really just a beautiful cycle to be living in.
It's just like not much to ask. 45 minutes, maybe an hour. Like that's it. You go over there. It's free for you. It's an hour. That's no big deal. Yeah, that's how you help the show.
Yeah, you better believe it. Flexibility. That's key for Noah Clowney and his role going forward. And 2 things that I'm trying to work on right now: openness and flexibility. And that is one Lily Taylor.
One of the all-time great poets. We're back in tomorrow talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.
Basketball, yeah.